Hello, yep, thanks for joining my beginner drawing class. So today we're going to just quickly go over the supply list and also the syllabus that you'll see on the first day of class. So let's first go over what you need to bring to class. It's pretty simple. We got the supply list right here. We got charcoal, paper, and an eraser. And in terms of paper, I actually like this tone paper here, just because it has a color and you can actually kind of like use white chalk to make the light areas as well as charcoal or pastel to make the dark areas. But you can bring in anything you like, including just newsprint. If you get really interested in trying to save your artwork, then you should get some fixative also at the art store. What it does is it glues down the charcoal or the pastel to your paper after you're done. But make sure that you use it outdoors because it's really kind of nasty. And in terms of an eraser, what I suggest doing is getting one of these soft erasers, and they tend to work better on things like charcoal because they're able to pick up the material better. So let's just quickly go over the plan for the next few weeks. So we have the first week is Introduction to Perspective. So basically we're taking geometric shapes, mainly like cubes, spheres, ellipses, right? Basic things that you would find around the house actually, just like a simple piece of furniture, and you put that into perspective. Now before we do that, we'll basically start with 1 and 2 point perspective and some of the theory behind it. Then in week 4, after we do a bunch of the shapes throughout those few weeks, we're going to do a very quick introduction to figure drawing. So learning how to do like the gestures, the movement of the line, as well as the basic proportions of the human body. In week 5, we will really think about light. For example, how does the light really influence the object that we're drawing? Week 6, we will think about composition. So how do you arrange all these different shapes onto your piece of paper? And week 7, we will get more deeply into light, especially like reflective surfaces and textures. And then week 8, we kind of finish off the class by dealing with something fairly difficult, which is folds. For example, in a piece of cloth, like my shirt here, there are these folds and they're kind of complicated. They're weighted down by gravity as well as the material itself. And it's a great way of just kind of finishing off the class with a more difficult project, but something I think that you'll find fairly fun. Now, in terms of just thinking about quote unquote fun, right, with something difficult, which is what art is, that's part of the interest for people is actually overcoming these difficulties. So you have to give yourself some time to practice, to run against some of the frustrations that involves learning something new. But pretty much anybody, given enough time, will learn these basic skills, and a lot of like what you have in your mind in terms of something interesting that you really want to convey through your art, you'll begin to be able to do that through several weeks of working on it. So yeah, let's go on to the first real project, which is going to be perspective. So yeah, make sure that you look at the supply list and make sure that you look at the agenda for the class. Okay. So today we're talking about week 1, Introduction to Perspective and Geometric Shapes. Finding the big shapes in objects, learning how to draw basic shapes in 1 and 2 point perspective, practice cubes in outline, practice cubes on tone paper using charcoal and white pastel to create contrast and depth. So actually I'm not going to use pastel, I'm going to use this charcoal. This is a big piece of charcoal. You don't have to have such a big piece. But the first thing we're going to talk about is posture, how we actually hold ourselves when we draw. Now notice how I have my arm basically just straight out. And it's just much, much better than, let's say, being really in, right? I see a lot of people kind of trying to draw like this, and then they end up with wrist pain, and they're not going to really see their drawing that well. Plus, there's a certain motion to drawing, and you can sort of feel it in the actual drawing that comes out. Being super tight versus kind of like opening yourself up to that drawing experience. So let's just try to draw some lines here with good posture. So let's say I want to draw a line from here to here, okay? Well, maybe my first line will be nice and light because I may very well mess up the first time around. See, so I'm kind of going super light and just trying to get it, and then when I'm kind of happy with it, I'm just go straight in, okay? But my arm is way out. That's the most important thing. Let's say I try to draw another line from up here down to here. So I kind of practice it first a few times, and then I do super light, and then I can go harder. Let's say I want to do a circle, okay? So my circle is going to be in this area right here. So I kind of first do a motion. I'm doing it nice and light. And then when I'm happy with it, I can go a little heavier. So you could try practicing this on your own, just drawing straight lines, drawing circles. You could try drawing just a square, right? The other thing you can do is you can try to draw some symmetry. So for example, let's say we were trying to draw an S. So that's my S right here. How would I make this symmetrical? Well, if I put a cross right through that, okay, so I know that the top of my S is going to have to come out to right about here, so that would be right about here. Do you see that? So that would be the beginning of my S, and then the bottom of my S will kind of go to right about there. So, yeah. And then it would end right about here. So yeah, I may need to fix this a little bit, but you get some sense that trying to get some symmetry is useful in terms of drawing, because your left and your right are often very much the same. Let's now go on to one-point perspective. So in terms of one-point perspective, we got a horizon line, and let's see, I'll go ahead and draw this in. You can use a ruler if you want, but this is our horizon line right here. And let's say we have some little mountains above the horizon, just to kind of give a sense of like what we're really talking about. And let's say we had a road going off into the horizon. So that would be our vanishing point right here. So let's say we had a tree right about here, we wouldn't be able to see it because it'd just be too far away. But if we had a tree, let's say right here, we'd be able to see it because it's a bit closer. And if we had a tree right here, it might be even bigger. And here we have a road. And this is the lines in the road coming down. So let's say we're trying to draw a cube right here on the side. Notice how these lines here are going to be parallel, and then these lines are going to be heading towards that vanishing point. So there's a line that goes here, and then there's a line that goes right here. There's a line that goes here. These are parallel also. And this little point right here also goes to the vanishing point. So the important point here is that as an object goes closer to this horizon line, the less you're going to actually see the top of it, right? So you see how you can barely see the top of this box right here. If I was going to do, let's say, another box, let's say I was going to draw a box right down here, further down, okay? We're going to put our box right in the middle of the road. Notice how you see the kind of the top of the box. That makes sense. So if this box goes further up, let's say we bring the box further up right to the horizon line, we wouldn't be able to see the top at all. See? And then at a certain point, we might be able to see actually the bottom of the box. So that's. But this is very common that people will actually tend to want to see the top of things when they really can't. They're really their object is really right at the horizon line. And so another example would be that as clouds get closer, let's just turn this over, put in some clouds. So let's say we have our horizon line just right here. We have our mountains. So we have some big fluffy clouds right here. The clouds, as they get closer to the horizon line, as they get closer together. And the same thing would be, let's say, with some water right here, okay? Let's say we have a lake right here. As the lake, and we have some little waves. As we get closer to the horizon, these waves not only get smaller, but they also get closer together. If that makes any sense. So I'm going to do this again here, just to show you real quickly how you do this perspective. Now this horizon line can really be anywhere. It could be way up here, it could be down below, it could be in the middle. Sort of the idea usually is that if you're near the ground, then the horizon line is further down, and then you got a large sky above. If you're looking down on the ground, then you would put the horizon line way up here, and then you're looking at a fairly large area down below. But let's just say that our horizon line is going to be right about here, near the middle. So we'll just go ahead and put that in. And let's say there is a building like right here. So in order to make this building, I'm just going to make a cube. So these lines here are parallel. This line here is above the horizon, this line here is below the horizon, and these lines here are the sides of our house. And in order to find the middle of my house, in order to put, let's say, a roof on this thing, we'll use the old X technique, put basically an X in the middle of my cube. So if I go straight up, that'll be the top of my house, the slanted roof. And let's say that our horizon line is like right about here, okay? So the horizon, the vanishing point doesn't have to be right in the middle. It could be on the side. You just have to do this on your own a few times and you'll see how these things actually work. So that's one wall. Now I'm going to put actually the side of my wall right here. So it's parallel with this line. And then this line here is going to go towards the horizon. Maybe the edge of my roof will also go towards the horizon. And you can barely just see maybe the top of the roof a little bit. And let's see, this line here is going to be paralleled by this line right here. Could put a little chimney over on this side if we want. And we can put a little door right here. Notice how the top of the door is right about at the horizon line. The bottom is going down a little bit. Maybe some little stairs. And we can put a road in. We could put another building over on this side if we wanted. So the roof goes this way. Some little trees. Some mountains. Some clouds. And, you know, maybe some more clouds over on this side. Maybe some more trees. And let's say we wanted to actually just add a little bit of shadow in this. Well, let's say the sun is coming down, I don't know, maybe this direction. Then we'd add the shadows down over on this side. And our tree would also have some shadows. And if there's a tree over here, they would have a little bit of shadow. Anyway, we will talk a bit more about shadows and the value scale at a later date. But let's now go to 2-point perspective. So this was 1-point perspective, right? Just 1 point. Now we're going to go to 2-point perspective. So that was 1-point perspective. Basically, 1-point perspective represents a cube like this, right? And if we were going to draw that cube, basically it looks like a cube like this, where these angles, these lines here are going inward, right? Just like that. So if you could see the line here and the line right here, they're going basically in and in like that. But what happens if we have our cube pretty much going like that, right? So in other words, we have our cube with lines going in and in like that, right? In other words, these lines are going in and then these lines are going in like that, right? Basically like that. How do we actually draw that carefully? So let's go ahead and put in our horizon. Maybe right here. And we'll have a vanishing point right here, and we'll have a vanishing point right here. Now in real life, usually vanishing points are way off in the distance. But in this case, we're just gonna squeeze these vanishing points in. There's gonna be a little distortion. And we're gonna put one line right here. And we'll put another line right here. And then at the top of our box, we're going to put a line right in here. And we'll put a line right in here. So these are the sides of our box. And then there's a line from here to here also, the top of our box. And there's a line from this corner to this vanishing point. So you see that there's a little triangle here that represents the top of our box, right? If the sun were coming down this way, then this side would be kind of in shadow, and then we'd have a shadow right over here. Now let's say we could actually see through this box. Well then, right, this box was made out of glass or something. We could actually see the inside of the box here, and we'd see the inside of the box on this side. Yeah, let me see how we could. So you see there's a triangle right here. It's a little diamond, and then there's a diamond here, and that diamond gets smaller and smaller as you get closer to the horizon line. Now let's say you are actually looking at the box from, the box somehow floated up above the horizon. So you could draw the bottom of the box like this. You'd have the corner of the box right here. And then you'd see the bottom of the box right here. And you'd see the bottom of the box on this side right here. So again, it makes a little diamond shape right there. Yeah, so that's 2-point perspective. So one possibility would be to try to draw an image like this. Like you can pretty clearly see the perspective. Like these railroad tracks are going off into the horizon. This would be the vanishing point right here. So you could draw this either as 2-point perspective or 1-point perspective. There'd be definitely some distortion if you drew this side as with 1-point perspective, but you know, it could be done. So that would be an interesting assignment, trying to draw some railroad tracks. So we're going to start off with an actual object to be drawn in perspective here. And we'll start with this cube. Now clearly we have one side here going off to the horizon. We have another side here going off to the horizon. Let's see if we can actually demonstrate that. So if we are looking at this, the way I would view this is I would see this as you've got one line here, and do you see how it's actually kind of at a 45-degree angle? So noticing that angle is going to be really important as the first steps in drawing this box. Then we're going to have another line down here. It's going to be a little bit more tilted this way. Same thing with this one here. We're going to draw that one in. And then this one here is going to be tilted a little more in this way. So we can kind of guess that our horizon line's way up here. Then these lines go all the way to that horizon. Now we might not be able to actually draw in that horizon because it'll be off our paper. This one here might fit into our paper. But we can kind of see it in our own mind's eye in any case. So let's give that a try. So I'm going to now demonstrate drawing this box here. For this demonstration, I'm actually taking a photograph, and that photograph helps me because I have to be able to kind of get out of the way of the camera here in order to draw for you. But it'd be good for you to learn how to both draw from a photograph as well as from reality. The ability to draw from reality is actually fairly important. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is I'm going to look for the angle of this line here and these lines here, okay? And I know that they do go off to a horizon line. They do go off to a vanishing point way off in the distance, right? This line here will be tilted a little bit more upward. This line here will be tilted a little bit more downward. So that's one way of just starting, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just basically eyeball this thing. See what happens. So I'm looking at this line here, and there could well be a lot of fixing that goes on. And I see another line that kind of goes, it's pretty close to straight across, but goes up a little. And then we have another line that goes this way, and we have another line that goes. So you see, I'm looking at what's the relationship between this angle and this angle. This one here is a little bit to the right. This angle is a little bit to the right of this angle. And it goes off this way. So I'm trying to get this basic diamond shape correct right from the start. And I see also that this right-hand side is a little bit smaller. This side here is a little bit smaller than this side. And then this line here on the bottom is pretty angled compared to this line. Sure, that might be a little much. I'm trying to make sure that my lines are basically straight up and down too. That may be a problem right now. Yeah, I think I'm going to fix this line. It's a little bit, could be a little bit more straight up and down. And so if I fix that one, I have to fix all the others too. Yep, and now I'm going to take a step back and see how it looks. Well, it's not too far off. So really quickly, I'm also going to show you how I shade this. Right, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm seeing that this side here is much darker than this side. The top is definitely the lightest. So I'm just going to quickly shade this in. And I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on the back side here. A little bit of a shadow coming off like this. If I wanted to, I could shade the whole back also. Now let's say we're doing the same box, but we're doing it like sitting down, and we're basically hardly seeing the top at all here. So how would this work? Well, we still have this line down here that's going upward towards the horizon line. This line here, basically it's really right, almost right at the horizon line. And the same with this line right here. So what we're going to show is just maybe the tiniest slither of a diamond at the top. Yeah, let's give that a try. So I've got this photograph here that I'm going to be working from. I think I want to insist that you actually try to draw from what you actually see, even though it definitely helps using photographs at times. So anyway, I'm going to put in a horizon line, since I think in this actual situation, drawing in the horizon line probably doesn't hurt. So here goes the horizon line. And the side of my box is going to be pretty much right in the middle here. It's going to go very close to the horizon line. And one of the sides is going to go this direction. Then the other side is going to go this direction. And then these sides are going to go very close towards the horizon. Maybe bring it down a little bit. This one's going to go this way. So now I'm looking at my photograph here. It does look like we do see the edge right here a tiny bit. The very top, but it almost, like, you almost don't see it. And this side goes all the way to here. Yeah, I got to keep my line straight. And then we go, and we can try to get the top a little more clear. And this one here a little more clear. So you see the little diamond here, and then we can darken in this side. I think my initial line wasn't all that straight right in the middle. It's important to get these lines straight. I think I'm going to redo this line. And we can get that shadow in on this side. So the point I'm trying to demonstrate is that this little triangle at the top, or little diamond shape at the top, it's very thin. And if the box was just even a little further up, it would just be a straight line. Like, you wouldn't see anything. Basically what you would see is it'd go just straight up to the horizon line like that. And what you would see is just a straight box, just like that. Our next project is how to do ellipses. So, for example, you see the top of this little paint can. How do we draw it so we're basically looking at it like this? And this is like the quick and dirty way. Basically what you start off with is a little cross, right? A little cross like this, straight. And they should be the same on the top as on the bottom, and the same on the sides. So what we're doing is we're essentially starting off with a larger line at the top, a larger line at the bottom, and then smaller little turns on the sides, right? So you're seeing how it's turning this way, but it's a sharper turn here and a sharper turn here. And then these things get connected like that. And then we fix it as we go along. So these four sides should be, roughly speaking, the same. And you can see how I'm kind of fixing it as I go along. I have to look, right? So this is another example of symmetry, how to make things symmetrical on all four sides. So that's the beginnings of an ellipse, right? And then our can would go down like that. And what we'll do next is we're going to do a more exacting version of the same thing, right? Because this is not exactly perfect, and it does take some time to kind of perfect these things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this basically perfectly symmetrical shape to demonstrate. So we have the top right here, we have a side, we have a side, we have a side right here. So clearly all these work together, and you see how roundy it is on the very ends. Right here it's very round, right here it's very round. A lot of times people tend to make these things a little pointy at the ends, and they're definitely not pointy. They're round at the ends. So a lot of times people tend to make these things too pointy. I think I've done that myself in the past. So you're tending to make like this, but it actually goes round at the ends, and this side is round at the ends. And if you want to know for sure if these things are all really the same, you turn it into a big pizza. You cut it into parts. So this part here, these four parts should all actually really look the same. So we're next going to work on this object right here. Now clearly you can see an ellipse at the top. This is the back edge, this is the front edge. And what you want to do in a drawing like this is you want to make sure that this is straight across your paper like this. For example, let's say the table is a little tilted and it's like this. It's not going to look any good. No matter what, you want this to be straight across until you decide you want to do some strange kind of modern piece. But yeah, for normal still lifes, you want this to be nice and up and down. So I got my photograph right here that I'm going to be doing. Kind of gives a sense of this is actually fairly squashed, right? This ellipse is not a great big ellipse. It's a fairly small ellipse. And what I've done here is I've already drawn out something nice, and the cross lines that'll help me line this whole thing up. So it goes up and down like this. So this will be actually the middle of the jar. So if I put a line right here and a line right here, that looks about, and then I do this fairly out to the side like this. I could actually even measure it. So this side is what? About a little less than 4 inches. We want this side to also be about, whoop, I didn't quite do it long enough on one side. And it's partly because it's difficult for me to step back from this angle the way I'm drawing it and trying to not cover over the camera. But anyway, so I'm going to start putting in this ellipse. And it's a fairly thin little thing. And I got to take a look back a little bit. Yeah, I can see that it's a little fatter on this side than on this side. So maybe widen this side a little bit. Get out my eraser. And I can see it's a little bit squished over on this side. So you can see how I'd spend quite a bit of time just trying to fix these things. And then on the bottom, right down here, because we're looking at this in perspective and things on the bottom are less squished than as they go up, we're going to make this one a little bit bigger. But actually, if we were following this exactly, it would fall off the edge of the page over on this side. So let's just do this one down here, okay? So this goes down a little bit. And we could draw out a whole nother ellipse that would kind of look right through the paper if we wanted to. So we have one here, one here. And this is going to help us get that proper round thing on the edges. So basically this ellipse kind of follows this ellipse right above it, maybe a tiny bit bigger, but really hardly at all because it's really almost at the same level as the horizon line. And then this keeps on going straight down. And we could just start thinking about the shadow on this left-hand side here. So in order to do that, we just make this left side quite a bit darker. And then it gets a little lighter as we go to the right. This is quite a bit darker. And it gets a little bit lighter as we go to the right. Yeah, we could put in just a little bit of the background over here if we wanted to. So that's gives you a sense of these ellipses. These ellipses are important if you want to do still lifes because, well, there's just 1,000 still lifes to be done. You know, if there was a pot, right, if you could see inside this pot, right, let's say there was a shadow coming in on this side. This is the lip of our pot, and we could have some little plants coming out this way. Yep. And so our last shape, so this would be something that we would work on in week 3, is the sphere. And the way that you actually really give a sense of the shape of the sphere is by looking at the shadow. So you have a shadow on this side, and then you have the light side on this side. And in between, you have a kind of a grayish sort of transitional area. And you really want to get a sense of like, what's the actual angle of that shadow? So in this case, the dark side is kind of a little moon shape on this side. Yeah, that's basically what we're going to draw next. So I'm going to work with it from a photograph again. It just helps to demonstrate. You can see that I've actually turned up the contrast in this photograph, and I've made it a grayscale. And you can see that this side here is quite light, then you have a large middle area, and then you have a dark area. And the dark, obviously the light is coming in from the top right and making the bottom left darker. There might be tiny little reflections from other things on the bottom side, but the best thing to do is just to ignore that. All right, so here goes. So I'm starting off with a cross again, just because it's going to help me get that symmetry for my circle. Let's just make all 4 sides roughly the same. And I'm going to try to get a nice circle in here. See how I start off nice and light. I can even think a little bit about the shadow at the bottom here. Looks like this side here needs to be a little bit bigger. So for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to make things perfect, but you can really work on this for a long time, just if you really want something to look nice and round, okay? So I'm going to make this side a little darker. And I know that my shadow is going to begin right about here, and it's going to end right about there. And so it's going to do this. Now, notice that this shadow area is actually the beginnings of ellipse. If I could see through it, it would be an ellipse, right? But because I can't see through the ball, I'm going to erase this part right here. And I'm going to go ahead and make this whole area fairly dark. And then this area here is going to be fairly light. And at this point, I can kind of get rid of these lines. This area here is fairly dark. There's a bit of a shadow, and there's a background that's somewhat darker back here. Oop. Dropping my tools. So this area is the area that's the lightest. We could actually darken up the edges a tiny bit because the light is kind of hitting more of the front area right about here. These areas are going to be maybe a tiny bit darker, a little bit darker at the bottom, maybe a really dark spot right here on the edge. So that's how you do a ball.